So, will the law be upheld or scuttled? Let's bring in our legal panel, Robert Schalk and David Bruno, both are defense attorneys and former prosecutors. The list is like, I mean, how do they make this up, Robert? I mean, you got a child is okay, a son-in-law or a daughter-in-law can come in, but you can't claim grandma, you can't claim grandpa. No aunts or uncles, no cousins. So what do you think will happen with the legal challenges?
Well, you're going to see they're using a list from the 1965 immigration laws that established, the familial tree, so to speak. But you're already seeing states like Hawaii who've already issued a challenge in court. We don't know when it's going to be heard, saying to the government, we need more refining of the definitions of the family tree, number one. Number two, we're asking that you expand it, because they're saying that different families, different countries, different religions, I mean, how are we going to let grandparents not come in when you're letting someone's brother-in-law come in, and how we're not going to allow a cousin to come in? But obviously the administration was extremely concerned about these 6 countries, and it merely is the 90-day wait at this point in time. But again, they're looking for greater revisement so that these individuals can come in.
So David, I mean, they can litigate this up the wazoo, I mean, depending upon familial relationships.
Right. The United States Supreme Court did not define what the bona fide relationship was, and that's part of the problem. But the decision itself should be assigned to the lower courts, including Hawaii, because they, in effect, reversed the stay that the Hawaii courts went into effect. So that should be a sign, because in the decision, they are essentially saying that the government is showing a probability of success on the merits, that they will, in all essence, become successful at the end. And there was a dissenting opinion by Justice Thomas. Alito and Gorsuch joined it, and they talked about this problem that these courts are going to have about not having a specific definition of a bona fide relationship that we're talking about.
Is this something that the Supreme Court then will try to rule on in October?
Well, you're going to have the lower courts start to interpret it, because we're waiting till October, and Hawaii is not going to wait that long before they issue and they start defining. So what's going to happen is these lower courts are going to start defining what they interpret to be the bona fide relationship or the established business relationship, where I think you're going to have more of a problem.
Well, what happens then? I mean, what if one court says, okay, your second cousin, third remove can come in, but, grandma, you can't come in? Are there going to be different rulings
if the lower court issues a stay similar to what they did before, it could potentially be appealed and appealed and appealed, and we're going to see various different legal battles on this interpretation. This is the State Department's decision, and the president has the right under the Constitution to make these decisions, and he should make them.
One thing that was fascinating was that they changed their minds on being engaged. That if you are engaged, or I guess if you claim that you're engaged, that you're allowed to come in. And that's kind of surprising, because you think of marriage fraud. I mean, that's been widespread for years. So what's going to stop someone from saying, yeah, I'm engaged, just to sneak right in?
Right. That's the biggest concern, because your concern is fraud, and your concern, I think, that you're going to be looking for is the courts went out of their way to point out to many of these refugee organizations that are looking to assist people in coming here, and they specifically pointed them out and said, you are not permitted to contact any foreign nationals who are trying to get asylum here or trying to come here in an effort to get them on your lists to establish a relationship prior to the ban coming in. So they made a point to say, do not attempt to try to commit fraud on our country and these courts, because they will be forbidden to come in.
On the other hand, if you are engaged, I mean, would it be unfair to try and bar the engagee?
Well, that's going to be how the State Department's going to interpret it moving forward. There's another possible area of fraud. It's not only the bona fide relationship, but also a formal and documented relationship with a U.S. entity. So potentially, if one has a relationship with a business moving forward, they could try to also get an exception. So yes, it's the relationships as well as now with businesses and educational institutions. Potentially, someone could invoke a waiver.
So in other words, if you're a student or you applied or accepted to a college or something, that would be an entity? You'd have some type of relationship with an entity?
Right. I think the students are going to have an easier time, but I think these business relationships are what's going to cause a lot of problems at these consulates all across the world, where people are seeking their visas to come here, because what type of documentation are they looking for? We don't know. And what type of documentation are they going to accept? Again, we don't know. So, I mean, obviously, listen, if you're coming to the United States and you have a meeting with Apple, and Apple provides you proper documentation to show, you're probably going to not have a difficult time. But the issue is going to be, are you going to try to commit fraud and establish some sort of business relationship that they're going to accept in an attempt to come in?
This seems so complicated, and maybe rightfully so. How do you think, David, it'll all play out?
in the courts. Again, there's going to be a district court decision, and hopefully they just won't jump out and stop something from happening. Make a decision and let it be ferreted out through the courts.
Robert?
I will say there will not be any questions with respect to students, because in the Hawaii case, they were actually students that was relevant to the case itself. The U.S. Supreme Court said no question, students are exempt from the ban.
Okay. Robert, what do you expect to happen in October?
I think that the Supreme Court is going to rule in favor again, and because they've already issued this temporary 90-day reinstatement, which is an indication, as David pointed out earlier, that the government was acting appropriately in issuing this ban or restriction, however you want to define it. I know we have a difficult time defining things these days, but I think they'll be successful.
Wow.
I agree. I agree with Robert.
No wonder you guys go to law school. I mean, it is complicated. Robert and David, thank you.
Thanks,
Pleasure.
Eric.
We'll see.